While doing maintenance on my aquarium last night, I came to the realization that this aquarium just turned 1 year old already, and I figured it would be a great time to look back at some of the lessons that I've learned over the past 12 months. It's been quite a while since the last update on this Saltwater Paludarium, so there's plenty of changes to take a look at in this video. If you've been watching since the beginning of this series, let me know in the comments. This video is sponsored by Vitalis. I've been using their foods for quite a while now and my animals love it. I think it's safe to say that this is the best quality food on the market as of right now. We'll take a look at these foods a little later in this video. Now there are things that I hadn't planned for or didn't know when I set up this aquarium 1 year ago. Something like this, a saltwater paludarium, at this scale is pushing the boundaries of a saltwater aquarium, so there wasn't a whole lot of information about it online. A lot of things were learned through trial and error. Overall, the basics of fish keeping and in particular reef keeping apply to this system. But there are some nuances as this project combined both saltwater as well as terrestrial elements. Over the past year, I've also received many questions about this setup from you guys, so today is a great opportunity to address some of those. The thing I enjoy most about this project is that it seems to connect people from both the saltwater side of the hobby as well as the freshwater side. The thing with saltwater aquariums is that we often use bright blue lighting to grow coral. This is something that bothers a lot of people, including myself. A reef tank in your living room illuminates your entire room and doesn't make the room any cozier, let's be honest. With a setup like this one, you can still enjoy the beauty of a saltwater aquarium and keep corals, but keep things more natural, so to speak. Now let's take it back to the very beginning, the foundation of this project. The cabinets this aquarium sits on are not custom, nor were they made specifically for aquariums. These are kitchen cabinets from IKEA, believe it or not. This cabinet setup cost me around 1500 euros, which is a lot cheaper than making a custom aquarium stand. Now we did make some reinforcements to these cabinets, so it could carry this 8-foot long aquarium which, when filled, probably weighs well over 1000 pounds. As you just saw, we placed big wooden beams on the floor, rather than using the standard cupboard legs. By using these beams, the weight gets distributed more evenly. We also left a little bit of room in between each cabinet, also to create a more even support across the entire tank. But other than that, we didn't really make any changes. So a year later, how are they holding up? Well, as you can see, the cabinets are still standing and there is no sign of any water damage. The fact that these cabinets are made to be used in kitchens is why they are holding up so well. Now you can imagine that a kitchen should be able to take a splash of water every now and then without falling apart. The aquarium itself was made using ultra clear glass, which is a lot more expensive than standard glass. Now the measurements of this aquarium are 8 foot in length, 22 inches deep and 12 inches tall. It doesn't have any plumbing, no overflow and no sump system attached. Now let's get into how I actually built this cape, how we managed flow and the things I've learned about it. When taking pictures and videos of this aquarium, I often reduce flow to a minimum or turn it off completely. And this is mainly because the rippling of the water doesn't make it pleasant to look at on camera. When I built this setup, I knew flow was going to be a big challenge. Not only because of the length and shallowness of this aquarium, or because we aren't using an external sump that could accommodate a powerful pump, but mostly because I didn't want to ruin the look by hanging power heads all across the aquarium. So instead I built an accurate base inside the aquarium, creating multiple compartments. I built these to put small return pumps in there, hiding them out of sight while having the option to service them when needed. In total I put 3 return pumps and a power head on this structure. This has been doing great. I then added a small power head on each end of the aquarium, so this doesn't really ruin the look. Now at first, this seemed like a great flow plan, but a few months in I noticed some areas for improvement. It wasn't terrible, but it could be better. As macroalgae started to grow, it made it challenging for water to flow past it. the pumps weren't powerful enough in some areas, causing small buildups of waste and algae. I constantly had to service the surface skimmer, which aids in skimming the bacterial biofilm off the water surface, and I figured the heater wasn't placed efficiently either. Barely any flow went past it. I looked into alternatives and settled for an external canister filter. These types of filters are very common in the freshwater side of the hobby. Now this powerful pump allowed me to take the surface skimmer as well as the heater out of the aquarium. I removed all the sponges from the canister filter as this wasn't really necessary for my setup. It would only lead to big nitrate and phosphate traps later on. Now with this improved setup, the water gets sucked into the canister filter through a lily pipe surface skimmer, and because of this I no longer have to service it. This part doesn't require any electricity either, which is perfect. Once the water gets into the canister filter, it runs right past the heater. Compared to the previous setup, this seems to be a lot more efficient. It then gets blasted right back into the setup through this outlet. Upgrading to the canister filter has been one of the best investments I've made for this setup. I've got it all dialed in now and it works perfectly for me. And honestly, we can judge by the look of the aquarium. A big part of the egg crate structure we talked about was built specifically for a very cool element of this aquarium. I wanted to create something that resembled a tide pool. Pond liner was used as a bottom for this tide pool and the edges were sealed with silicone, making sure sand wouldn't fall through constantly. Now I'm constantly making changes to this tide pool, but the mangroves have been in here since the very beginning. As of now I have a small group of sexy shrimp living in the tide pool, and they love hanging out on these carpet anemones. They rarely make it out of the tide pool, so they must enjoy it in here. There's also a wide variety of macroalgae and soft coral. Yesterday I created a new opening by cutting away some macros. I then glued some Ricordia mushrooms on each side and it changed the flow pattern quite a bit. I can't wait to see how this will affect the growth of this tide pool over the coming months. The mangroves elsewhere in the aquarium have grown a lot in recent months. We originally placed them atop of a layer of mineral mud, but about 6 months in, I noticed growth was stumped and the coloration of the leaves showed me they were missing some nutrients. I bought a bag of freshwater plant root tabs, which are small pills with minerals, and I carefully placed them in the sand near the roots of these plants. Now this seemed to do the trick because growth really took off from here. But now again, 6 months later, it seems like it's time to add some new root tabs, because growth is slowing down again and the leaves are slowly discoloring. The minerals in these root tabs haven't shown any negative effects on the saltwater invertebrates, fish or coral. Although I do have some issues with keeping corals alive in this aquarium, and I now know the reason why. But more on that later, it's not what you think. On this setup I'm using the Illumagic X4 lights by Dalua, and I am very impressed by the way they are performing. The app works great, it's easy to use, but most importantly, my aquarium is thriving. Macroalgae, coral, mangroves and my other plants rely heavily on photosynthesis, so good lighting is a must. And well, they're all growing like crazy, and lighting is a big contributor to this success. So judge these lights not only by my words, but also by the results. Terrestrial plants and saltwater usually don't go well, but in this setup it seems to work great. One of the biggest doubts I had, which was shared by some viewers, was that salt would slowly start creeping up, killing all the plants. During the first few months, I learned that some plants, and especially moss, were placed way too close to the water, allowing the salt to creep up. I removed these plants and I think I found the sweet spot, as all plants about 2 inches above the water seem unaffected. One of the most common questions I get asked in relation to the plants is, how do you water them? You can't just pour tap water on them, because that could contaminate the ecosystem below. The solution for this is that I'm watering my plants with RODI water, the same water used to top off for evaporation in a saltwater aquarium. This way, it poses no threat to the marine life below. Now, RODI water is stripped of all its minerals, metals and contaminants. So how do the plants get their nutrients? Well, the air plants get sprayed with fertilizer every once in a while, and the leakage into the aquarium is minimal. I've also put the same root tabs as I've put near my mangroves, near some of these plants. Believe it or not, the biggest challenge is keeping the moss alive. It's not an enclosed environment, so there's a lot of evaporation. This causes the plants to dry out quite fast, especially the moss. What doesn't help either is the heat of the lights above, speeding up the evaporation process even further. Now there is something that I've been struggling with for a while now, and it's the corals. If you've been following this project since the very beginning, you might remember the Goniopora, Lobophilia, Duncan coral, or a few others. Now unfortunately, most of them died. The same goes for the nice Acanthostreas I had in this area. I kept focusing on my water parameters for an answer, but each time I did tests, they all came back okay. I had to look elsewhere, and one day while laying down in bed I noticed something strange. The filefish and dwarf angel developed a taste for coral, literally ripping pieces from my large polyp stony corals. When some friends visited from Germany to film a video, we caught them right in the act. They were caught snacking on my new Acanthophilia. Now luckily I managed to save this piece by moving it elsewhere in the aquarium, but it's still getting bothered every now and then. Once they got a taste of coral, things spiraled out of control fast. They moved from one species to the next, and catching them in this controlled mess was nearly impossible. Since I am setting up some other aquariums downstairs soon, hopefully, this project has been delayed for months now, I'll have plenty of opportunities to keep coral alive. I really like these fish and honestly prefer keeping them in this aquarium, so I am okay with less coral in this tank and focus more on macroalgae. I knew from the start that this was a risk, but these fish are so cool. I really like how these filefish blend in with the Halimeda macroalgae. Now, could this sudden feast on my coral be attributed to something missing in their diets? I don't think so. I feed my fish a variety of foods, including live and frozen meaty foods. These foods alone don't provide all the necessary nutrients. So in addition, I also feed a variety of Vitalis foods. These foods are well known in the hobby. They were carefully created using high quality ingredients including whole fish meal, squid, shrimp, mussel, and seaweed blends, uniquely formulated for high digestibility. They employ unique processes that create soft, malleable feeds that further aid ease of digestion. Owing to their low leaching formulas, their diets are highly stable in water. Combined with their high digestibility, this helps to minimize excess nutrient accumulation, significantly benefiting water quality while putting less stress on filtration systems. I personally think this food is one of the best quality foods available on the market right now. Now you might remember that last year I was experiencing some problems with my fish. They were starting to get sick, and I figured that once I started adding Vitalis to their diets, their immune systems really improved, and I no longer had any issues with sick fish. During the first few months of this project, I had a group of very small gobies in this aquarium. Red ones, green ones, and even striped ones. These fish belonging to the Trimma and Aviota family are nowhere to be seen now. Every now and then I still spot some green ones, but it's becoming harder and harder to spot them, as this aquarium has so many hiding spots. I also learned that the lifespan of especially the Trimma fish is very short. Some species only live up to 3 months. So it is possible that these fish already died of old age. Or maybe they're still alive, but great at hiding. Who knows? The thing I love most about this aquarium is that it's always changing. It's very dynamic. Macroalgae grows, but every now and then a piece breaks off and floats to other parts of the system, or the algae goes sexual and melts off, allowing me to constantly make changes. It really never gets boring, but I am running out of time. Something I've been worried about for some time now is the fact that these plants are doing much better than expected. You can see that the mangroves have already reached the lights above, and this causes two main issues. First, to the plants itself, as they are starting to burn. The leaves keep growing right below the LEDs, causing them to get burned by the heat. But that's not all. I guess the biggest issue is that they're blocking a ton of light from reaching the aquarium itself. So not only are the macroalgae creating dark spots in the tank, the mangroves are causing the most and biggest dark spots. That leaves me with the following question. Do I trim down these mangroves? Do I change the lighting setup, only buying a few extra months of time? Or do we completely redo this setup and place the mangroves in the middle so that we can do some bonsai scaping and create nice bushy trees? Now I think that could be really cool, but let me know what you think in the comments and make sure you give this video a thumbs up. It really helps. Until next time, thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe.